Yes, I take a hit of the chronic with Dr. Dre, December 15th, right here, man.
Right back at you. Dr. Dre got the chronic, featuring Snoop Doggy Dogg and the death row inmates, Daz, Corrupt, and myself, RBX. And I can't forget the lyrical murderer, Miss Lady Rage. What you didn't know? You better ask somebody. The chronic for the summer '93. Ha!
Hell yeah.
1, 2, 3 into the 4. Snoop Doggy Dogg and Dr. Dre is at the door.
The year is 1992. At the beginning of the year, the classic movie Juice was released to theaters. The then Washington Redskins beat the Buffalo Bills in the Super Bowl. Riots broke out in Los Angeles, California. Bill Clinton was elected president for the first time. Just a month after Bill was elected for president, Dr. Dre released his classic debut album that changed rap history. This would be The Chronic. Before getting into the video though, I would quickly like to plug that I made a TikTok that you guys should definitely go follow. And if you haven't already done it yet, go follow my Instagram too. That would be greatly appreciated. You guys can always reach out and just show me some love. It's all good. Make sure to comment on what it was like for you in 1992 when The Chronic came out and what your reaction was when you first heard it. Rap-wise, in 1992, some of the albums that came out that year were Bizarre Ride to the Far Side by The Far Side, The Predator by Ice Cube, What The Album by Redman, and Business Never Personal by EPMD. With the release of The Chronic, there was a cultural shift. Chuck D of Public Enemy commented that the song Nothing But a G Thang slowed the genre down and made it more laid back. He further said that Dr. Dre helped usher hip hop from the crack era to the weed era. Dr. Dre wasn't the first rapper to rap about weed by any means, but the commercial success of The Chronic made it more of a mainstream thing, at least in the rap sphere. Especially since The Chronic was a part of Snoop Dogg's introduction to the world, and we all know what he's partly known for. He wasn't the only one that got introduced to the world on a large scale. RBX, Warren G, The Lady of Rage, Corrupt, Nate Dogg, Daz Dillinger, and more as well. But another era The Chronic helped usher in was the G-Funk era. G-Funk being short for Gangsta Funk, which is a subgenre of gangsta rap that emerged from the West Coast scene in the early 90s. Funk and P-Funk music are some of the genres that Dr. Dre grew up listening to. While he did not invent G-Funk, he damn sure perfected it. Samples from these genres make up almost a third of the album, with Dr. Dre primarily sampling Parliament and Funkadelic, which are two bands created by the legendary George Clinton. Two of the singles of The Chronic, being Let Me Ride and Dre Day, sample these genres, which added to the popularity of G-Funk due to how successful those songs were. But the story of The Chronic starts with Dr. Dre being a co-founder of Death Row Records in 1991 alongside the infamous Suge Knight. Prior to this, Dr. Dre was with Eazy-E's Ruthless Records, being a part of the legendary rap group NWA. Through time, Dr. Dre became frustrated with the business practices of the group's manager, Jerry Heller. This is where Suge Knight comes into the picture, with him being introduced to Dr. Dre by the DOC. Suge was the DOC's manager, with the DOC playing a pivotal behind-the-scenes role in NWA and eventually Death Row Records. He's the brainchild behind a lot of our favorite songs and artists. There happens to be all sorts of stories about how Dre managed to get out of his contract with Ruthless Records. In the 2015 Straight Outta Compton film about NWA, it's depicted that Eazy-E got beat up. Some say that Suge and his goons got physical with Eazy-E, while others say that Suge would never dare lay a finger on Eazy-E due to the potential consequences. Suge was connected with Bloods, but Eazy-E was arguably more connected. Not only did he have love from the Crips and other predominantly black gangs, but Eazy was well loved by Mexican gangs, people within the Mexican community in general. If Eazy really got touched, then a war would have ignited. Even Jerry Heller said that nothing ever physically happened to Eazy. Eazy was still agitated at what Suge and Dre did though. Here's Dre's response to what happened with Eazy-E.
Like y'all came with them at bats, you know what I'm saying?
Nah,
and
man.
Swinging and all that old thing, you know what I'm saying? Dr. Dre came that way at Easy, you know what I'm saying? Is that the way you got in the
I don't know what he
song?
talking about.
You know what I'm
I'm
saying?
innocent. I didn't force him into doing nothing. Easy is a gangster. Easy is this big time gangster, right? You know, that's the man. So how am I gonna be able to force him into doing anything?
While Dre was laughing, Eazy-E ultimately had the last laugh. Though Dr. Dre went on to be a co-founder of Death Row Records, Eazy-E was still making money off of Dr. Dre. According to Eazy-E, Dr. Dre was signed to him exclusively as an artist and producer for 6 years. Though Dr. Dre left Ruthless Records, Eazy-E was the one who made it possible by being able to still eat off of Dre's work even though he wasn't with them anymore. Eazy got paid if Dr. Dre made a record via producing for someone or as an artist. This is why on Eazy-E's diss track to Dr. Dre, titled Real MFing G's, he said that Dr. Dre's diss song towards him, Dre Day, only made his payday. It's reported that Eazy-E went on to profit around $1.5 million from The Chronic due to the success the album had. But now on Death Row, Dr. Dre got to work on his debut single as a lead artist. This single turned out to be Deep Cover, which appeared on the soundtrack to the movie of the same name in 1992. Outside of being Dre's debut single, the song is also notable for being Snoop Dogg's first introduction to the world before The Chronic.
Yeah, and yeah, don't stop.
Cause it's 187 on an undercover car.
Yeah, and yeah, don't stop.
Snoop's feature on Deep Cover, along with his numerous appearances on The Chronic, led to him having one of, if not the most anticipated rap albums of all time. A rap album being Doggy Style, which I recently covered. Link in the description if you would like to know more. Outside of appearing on the Deep Cover soundtrack, the song was initially planned to be included on The Chronic. This never came to fruition due to the controversy surrounding the Body Count and Ice-T song Cop Killer. It's said that another song called Mr. Officer got cut from the album for this exact reason as well, but I'll talk about that in the second half of the video. Production for The Chronic started in the spring of 1992. This would happen to be around a very bad time in the Los Angeles area due to the LA riots. The LA riots happened as a result of a multitude of things: ongoing racial tensions, the killing of Latasha Harlins, and 4 police officers being acquitted of beating Rodney King are said to be the main reasons that led to unrest in the community. The LA riots heavily affected the making of The Chronic. The album was only released 8 months after and was still fresh in the minds of those in the community. Dr. Dre and those featured on The Chronic channeled how they felt about the riots into the album. Snoop said that NWA opened white America's eyes, but The Chronic opened their ears. He further said that white America did not understand what NWA was going through when they said F the police. But when the Chronic came out addressing the LA riots and the Rodney King situation, some people understood what they were talking about and why they were angry. While Dr. Dre did not take part in the looting, others working on the album did, like Snoop Dogg, who brought looted items back to the studio. Around this time, gangster rap was under heavy scrutiny in the media, with there being many campaigns against it. People felt like the music was negatively impacting the youth. Aside from dealing with this, the making of the Chronic is described to be hellacious. The DOC did an interview with Vlad TV talking about this. In the interview, he talked about how there musically was not a difference between the NWA days and the making of the Chronic. The only difference was the environment that surrounded the making of the music. This was due to Suge Knight and his goons being in the studio. As the DOC describes it, they either just got out of the penitentiary or were on their way there. In the liner notes of the Chronic, Dr. Dre credits the DOC for pressuring him to do the album in the first place. Upon the conclusion of the making of the album, Dr. Dre ran into more problems. He tried to shop the Chronic to record labels, but they rejected him for numerous reasons. In 2008, Dr. Dre did an interview with XXL where he talked about how labels rejected him, saying that the Chronic was not hip-hop due to him using live instruments on the album. This wasn't the only thing, because labels were weary to work with Dr. Dre due to the reputation Death Row Records already had, along with his issues with Eazy-E due to how he left Ruthless Records. Going to these labels and getting rejected caused Dr. Dre to second guess himself. He once stood on his balcony with Nate Dogg while listening to the Chronic, questioning whether it was actually good or not. Dr. Dre had no idea how much of a bomb it would end up being. His fortunes changed when Interscope Records took a chance on him after the chairman of the label at the time, Jimmy Iovine, heard about the project. He was blown away, and Interscope Records taking a chance on Dr. Dre and the Chronic proved to be a smart decision. Only one single dropped before the release of the album, which was Nothing But a G Thing. It ended up being a massive success, with the song peaking at number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100. If you're wondering what song prevented it from being number 1, it was Snow's song Informer, another classic track. But as of 1993, Nothing But a G Thing is certified platinum by the RIAA.
It's like this and like that and like this and it's like that and like this and like that and it's like this.
In December of 1992, The Chronic was released and peaked at number 3 on the Billboard 200 charts. By November of 1993, the album was triple platinum, meaning that it had sold over 3 million copies in the United States. Aside from the music on the album being iconic, the cover art for it is equally as iconic. It was done by famous photographer Michael Benabib. His assignment was to shoot the cover art for the project. During the photo shoot, Suge Knight started to introduce Michael to other rappers that he wanted him to photograph. Not knowing of Suge Knight's reputation, Michael told him that he was simply here to shoot the original people that he came here for. During this argument, he even called Suge Knight cuz, which did not go over well with Suge due to Suge being a blood, and calling a blood cuz is seen as being very disrespectful. Some time passed, and Michael ran into Suge Knight again at a listening party. This was after The Chronic was released. Suge called Michael's name from across the room, and they made up. Suge even called him cuz. Speaking of the cover art though, it pays homage to zigzag rolling papers. It's what some people used back in the day for their Chronic, I guess. Chronic was the name of high-grade weed back then. In 2014, Snoop Dogg did an episode of GGN News with Seth Rogen where he explained where the term chronic came from. He said that in 1991, he met a white boy who had hydroponic weed. Hydroponic refers to the process of growing cannabis plants in a water-based, nutrient-rich solution rather than soil. Snoop Dogg got so high that he misheard the dude and thought that he said hydrochronic. From this point, they referred to good weed as chronic. Dr. Dre titling his album this was simply him saying that his album was dope and the best thing out.
Yeah, 9 Deuce, Dr. Dre, dropping Chronic once again.
The album starts off with the Chronic intro. According to Colin Wolfe, who's credited on the track, the intro was done upon the completion of the album. He proclaims that he played the instruments on the track while Dr. Dre programmed the drums. Dr. Dre starts off the album by giving a shout out to everyone who supported him from day one while welcoming the audience to Death Row Records. Snoop Dogg appears in the interlude of the track and is the first time we hear from him on the album due to him being featured multiple times. In the intro, Snoop Dogg shouts out MC Ren, who was once in the group NWA alongside Dr. Dre. Before the release of The Chronic, the group called it quits. MC Ren told Eazy-E that he did not want to do another NWA album, which resulted in the two not speaking for nearly a couple years. Despite the breakup, MC Ren and Dr. Dre were cool, hence the shout out in the intro. Upon first listen, what Snoop Dogg said might come off as a diss, but it was not. He's saying that they're cool with MC Ren, but aren't cool with the rest of the group. Ice Cube was also a part of the group, notably leaving in the late 80s to pursue a solo career. He dropped arguably the greatest diss track of all time with No Vaseline aimed at NWA. They responded and eventually the group disbanded. Ice Cube and Dr. Dre would not be cool again until after the release of The Chronic. This is evident with Ice Cube appearing in the music video for Let Me Ride. Snoop Dogg also had smoke for Jerry Heller in the intro. Jerry Heller being NWA's former manager and the co-founder of Ruthless Records alongside Eazy-E. He referred to the two as Mr. Rourke and Tattoo, which is a reference to the show Fantasy Island, where Mr. Rourke was the leader and Tattoo was his sidekick that was a dwarf. Eazy-E is notoriously short, with his height being around 5'3". This perfectly fades into Dre Day, which features Snoop Dogg. It was the second single from the album. It peaked at number 8 on the Billboard Hot 100. As of 1993, the song is certified gold by the RIAA.
Wow, wow, yippee yo, yippee yay. The sounds of a dog brings me to another day.
This is a full-on diss track against people that Dr. Dre was beefing with at the time, most notably Eazy-E, who is betrayed by the late comedian A.J. Johnson in the music video. Rest in peace to A.J. Johnson and Eazy-E. Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg also took shots at Southern rapper Uncle Luke and East Coast rapper Tim Dog on the song. As many people already know, all of these rappers replied with various disses, but the most notable one is Real MF&G's by Eazy-E, which dropped in 1993. While Dre Day was the second single for The Chronic, Let Me Ride was the third and last single, along with being the third song on the project. It peaked at number 34 on the Billboard Hot 100.
Saying,
Let Me Ride samples and interpolates the Parliament song Mothership Connection Star Child. RBX is the man who reportedly wrote Let Me Ride. It's no secret that Dr. Dre has had writers throughout his career, and RBX has talked about how Let Me Ride came about. He said that the song came about through a conversation with Snoop Dogg. RBX was working on his own album during the downtime of the recording for The Chronic. RBX rapped some of the lyrics for his album to Snoop Dogg. Dr. Dre walked in during this and was impressed enough to ask RBX if he could use what he rapped for The Chronic. RBX wanted to be a team player and felt that Dr. Dre had his best interest at the time. He had no clue how big the song, let alone The Chronic, would be. Let Me Ride went on to win a Grammy for Best Rap Solo Performance at the 36th Annual Grammy Awards. RBX ghost wrote for Dr. Dre multiple times and appears several times throughout The Chronic. While the official version of Let Me Ride is a classic, there's also a remixed version with Snoop Dogg and Daz Dillinger with an appearance from George Clinton. Some people prefer it over the original. Let me know in the comments how you feel about it. The Day They Took Over is the 4th track on the album. It features RBX, Snoop Dogg, and Daz Dillinger. The Day They Took Over samples the documentary Birth of a Nation 4/29/92. The documentary is about the infamous LA riots which occurred in 1992, which, as I said earlier, greatly impacted the making of the album. Daz Dillinger opens up the song rapping about the effects of the riot. He raps in a Jamaican accent. Colin Wolfe said that while he was working with Dr. Dre during the NWA days, they started to experiment with reggae during the making of the group's sophomore album. They liked the feel of it, which is why it's used in the song. Colin further said that initially there was a song called Mr. Officer that was intended for the Chronic. In the song, Dr. Dre called out Daryl Gates, the former chief of LAPD. He's notorious for his targeting of the city's black communities during his tenure. Mr. Officer did not make the final cut for the Chronic and would not see the light of day until it leaked in 2016. It's a darker and grittier version of The Day They Took Over. There are some differences in the song, with the big one being the feature of Prince Italo Joe instead of Daz Dillinger, and some different lyrics in Dr. Dre's verse. The hook is also different.
Mr. Officer, I wanna see you laying in a coffin, sir.
After The Day They Took Over comes the classic track Nothin But a G Thang, which features Snoop Dogg. Dr. Dre met Snoop Dogg through Dr. Dre's stepbrother, Warren G. Warren brought Dr. Dre a cassette of Snoop Dogg's raps, which really impressed him. The way Snoop Dogg said his words and his voice really intrigued Dr. Dre. As I said, Deep Cover was Snoop Dogg's introduction to the world, and he went on to feature on well over half of the songs on The Chronic. Some people look at The Chronic as a collab album to a point due to how many times Snoop is featured. Nothin But a G Thang did wonders for both of their careers because of the success that came from it. Originally, Snoop Dogg wrote his verses for Nothin But a G Thang to a different beat. In an interview on Questlove's podcast Questlove Supreme, Snoop Dogg mentioned that the original sample for Nothin But a G Thang was the song I've Been Watching You by the Southside Movement. This is how Nothin But a G Thang would have sounded like if the original sample was kept in the song. Big shout out to Siza Inc. Records for doing this. Pardon me if I mispronounced your name, but it's really cool to hear how the record was initially going to sound. I'll put a link in the description for the full version.
1, 2, 3 into the 4. Snoop Doggy Dogg and Dr. Dre is at the door.
Dr. Dre tells a slightly different side of the story. He said that the original song sampled a Boz Scaggs record that he could not remember the name of. Dre said that Snoop was in jail at the time and he desperately needed to finish the demo for The Chronic. So he called in and I taped the recorder of the phone to the mic. You can hear jail sounds in the back and everything. He's going 1, 2, that whole thing. That was the original version. I just happened to be at my mom's house going through records and I found this Leon Haywood, I Wanna Do Something Freaky to You sample and thought that would make a better foundation track. So I took that back, recorded the track, Snoop got out, and we just recorded this song at my house. It was a bedroom that I converted into a studio in my house. That's where the first half of The Chronic came from. There are also stories of Warren G being the one who brought Dr. Dre the sample of I Wanna Do Something Freaky to You by Leon Haywood. Colin Wolfe is someone who has said this. He also said that Nothin But a G Thang had to be recorded 3 different times. The first tape got messed up by being left in a car. Another time the track got accidentally erased before we got the song that we have today. Another thing to note about the song is that the DOC helped out with the lyrics. He's also mentioned in the song by Dr. Dre. When G-Thang was created, I was living in Agora Hills and Snoop and Warren G were living with me. Snoop went upstairs, I stayed downstairs, and we met back up in an hour. When he came back downstairs, I said, let's take this piece and put it here. This doesn't really work there. It's really just like a jigsaw puzzle. Snoop Dogg has said, possibly jokingly, that he got the like this, that, and this part of the hook of the song from the DOC. This is because when the DOC was teaching Snoop Dogg how to rap, this is some of the stuff that he was saying. There does happen to be a remix to the song that appears on the Death Row Greatest Hits album, which was released in 1996. It's a freestyle remix between Snoop Dogg, Daz, and Corrupt. The beat is also different, with them rapping over the Beats Ain't Ish instrumental instead.
Now check facts for a second, I'm checking my records dope. It's Snoopy goes for broke, so what's up, Lo?
These Nuts is the 6th song on The Chronic. It features Daz Dillinger. Warren G is on the skit of the song with a woman. Nate Dogg does the outro, but unfortunately, this is his only feature on the album. It's believed that this song is the origin of the viral These Nuts meme that took over the internet in 2015. Rudy Ray Moore, who's famous for portraying the blaxploitation character Dolomite, is sampled in the intro. His chestnuts routine from his comedy album Elect President Dolomite is sampled in the song. Lil Ghetto Boy is the next song on the album and it features Snoop Dogg and Daz Dillinger. The song samples and is inspired by the 1972 Donny Hathaway song Lil Ghetto Boy, which appeared on the soundtrack to the movie Come Back Charleston Blue. The intro of the song samples an excerpt from a street video that was taken during the LA riots. The story of the song is very captivating and it was one of the last songs that was recorded for the album.
Murder was the case that they gave me. Dear God, I wonder, can you save me? I'm only 18, so...
With a Gun is the 8th track on the album. Snoop Dogg appears in the chorus of the song. During the making of The Chronic, Dr. Dre was inspired by the A Tribe Called Quest album, The Low End Theory, which released in 1991. This is evident with this track sampling jazz musician Johnny Hammond Smith's song Big Sur Sweet from his 1974 album Higher Ground. Dr. Dre being inspired by A Tribe Called Quest is pretty ironic though. In an interview with Q-Tip of A Tribe Called Quest, he talked about how his group was inspired by NWA's 1988 album Straight Outta Compton to make The Low End Theory. Quite the domino effect of inspiration. With a Gun then fades into the track Rat-a-tat-tat-tat. RBX and Snoop Dogg make appearances on the song. The 1973 blaxploitation film The Mac is sampled in the intro. Colin Wolfe said that Daz Dillinger did the drums on the record while Dr. Dre found the instrumental break. This was while Colin played bass and guitar on the record. The name of the song is in reference to the sound of a gun. It's said that the lyrics of the song and its title are inspired by a line that Slick Rick said in his song Children's Story. Next up is what's regarded as one of the greatest skits on a rap album. This is the $20 Sack Pyramid skit. The skit is a take on the popular pyramid show that started in the 1970s. The show involves two teams of two contestants competing for a set sum of money. Throughout the years, the numbers have changed. In the skit, instead of playing for that amount of money, the contestants are playing for a $20 sack of Indo and a $35 gift card to the Compton swap meet. One of the contestants in the skit is the DOC. He portrays Duckmouth. It's believed that Dr. Dre was inspired by the game show skit on the De La Soul album 3 Feet High and Rising, which was released in 1989. The track Lyrical Gangbang comes after the skit and it features the Lady of Rage, RBX, and Corrupt. If you know the meaning of the title, then you know. Everybody takes their turn with the beat. Colin Wolfe and a friend brought the Led Zeppelin song When the Levee Breaks to Dr. Dre, which he went on to sample for Lyrical Gangbang. High Powered is the 12th song on the album and it features RBX. Dr. Dre does the intro and Daz Dillinger does the outro. RBX is the only one who has a verse. I get nudged. "Hey X, come listen to this." So I woke up from a dead sleep and Dre said, "You got something for me?" I said, "Yeah." I went in there and it was basically, I jotted something down for a minute and we kind of rehearsed it real quick. I said, "Come on, let's go." And I went in there to do it, but I was doing it thinking it was going to be a reference. But when I did it and came out, I said, okay, that's good enough. Let me go marinate in Dre. I'm going to knock that stuff out. Dre was like, "You're done." So yeah, one take. The Doctor's Office is another skit on the album. It's a play on Dr. Dre's rap name. In the skit, a patient, aka Jewel, is trying to see Dr. Dre. Jewel is also the one who sings in the background of the skit. The Lady of Rage portrays Dr. Dre's receptionist. Jewel comes to the office because she has an appointment, but Rage informs her that Dr. Dre is still with the patient. It's revealed that Dr. Dre is not a normal doctor because he's in the back having relations with the patient. For years, people have wondered what the background song in the skit is. Well, it's the Jewel song, "Back in Bed Again." After the Doctor's Office skit, we enter into the final stretch of the album, starting with Stranded on Death Row. It features Corrupt, RBX, The Lady of Rage, and Snoop Dogg. Bushwick Bill of the rap group Ghetto Boys does the intro and outro. Bushwick has talked about how his cameo on The Chronic came about. I remember Warren G and Snoop Dogg invited me to the studio and Dr. Dre's in there with one of the guys from a rap group called Poe Broke and Lonely. I heard the theme Stranded on Death Row, which reminded me of Dark Shadows, the old radio TV show. I asked him if I could say something on it and he said no, cause I have to finish this album mix. And I was like, come on, just let me say something, and if it does not work, then cool. I kept bothering him until he let me say it. Then he said, "Can you do that again?" That's how I got on it. The title of the song, along with the features on the album, are in reference to Death Row Records. The features on the album were referred to as the Death Row inmates.
In this dimension, I'm the presenter and the inventor and the tormentor.
Chris the Glove Taylor claims that he co-produced the record. For those who don't know who he is, Chris is known as Dr. Dre's original ghost producer. In a 2020 interview with Unique Access, Chris said that Stranded on Death Row was the first beat he produced with Dr. Dre. He's officially credited as a mixer on the album, though it appears he did more than just that. The Roach is the outro to The Chronic. The title is in reference to a roach of a joint. It's a little bit of weed basically. Kind of perfect because after this outro, there's one last track which is Ain't Ish. The song features Snoop, Jewel, Daz, and Corrupt. Snoop Dogg does a very memorable hook on the song. Snoop Dogg has said that Corrupt is the one who came up with the hook. It just so happened to be him who went on to do it. Dr. Dre has the first verse on the song, and his verse is obviously aimed at Eazy-E and Jerry Heller. Though Dr. Dre is dissing Eazy-E and Jerry Heller in the record, the song is also a response to the Roxanne Shante song, Brothers Ain't Ish. This was released on her 1992 album, The B Is Back, which came out in October of 1992, just 2 months before the release of The Chronic. The conclusion of the song ends The Chronic. Just like that, we have completed the album. It's been a journey, but it was about time that I talked about what's regarded as one of the greatest albums of all time. Dr. Dre really changed the game with The Chronic, and it ushered in the Death Row era. It also gave the platform to introduce an artist like Snoop Dogg, who exploded on the scene, eventually achieving great success with his album Doggy Style 2 years later. Just like that album, The Chronic was taken off of streaming services for a little bit, but luckily it's back for the fans to enjoy. All in all, let me know in the comment section below what you think of the album and what classic album should I cover next. I love you guys with all my heart. Peace.